We're very excited now to be joined by Dave Smith. He is host of the Part of the Problem podcast. He's a prominent libertarian, and for our purposes, recently appeared at the Libertarian Convention, where former President Donald Trump actually spoke and was booed on the stage. So let's take a listen, and then we'll get Dave's reaction.
Combine with us in a partnership. We're asking that of the libertarians. We must work together. Combine with us. You have to combine with us. We cannot give crooked Joe Biden 4 more years. We cannot give crooked Joe Biden 4 more years. Anyone can talk about defending freedom, but I've actually put everything on the line to resist these despots and these stuff. And I stand before you tonight as your best hope of defeating the weaponized Biden.
Woo! Maybe, yeah, you love to see it, you hate to see it. Dave, you spoke a little bit before. Just give us a rundown. What led up to that? What was the reaction? Why were people in the crowd so upset with Trump?
Well, I mean, you know, the Libertarian Party it's a third party, and I don't know as much about, say, like the Green Party, but I'd imagine it's a similar type of dynamic where, I mean, these are people, they're a member of a third party in a country that is rigged for 2 parties. And the reason they're there is because they are so disgusted with the establishment of both political parties. And so to have an actual president who's got a 4-year track record and many things that us libertarians are very unhappy about, this was just destined to go this way. I'm not sure if he knew what he was walking into. I think you know, he might have been like, oh, libertarians are kind of like Republicans, and maybe they'll like some things about me. And but you know, Bobby Kennedy and Vivek Ramaswamy both spoke the previous day, and they drew some boos, but they also got some cheers. But Donald Trump just, I mean, before he said a word, the place had it with him.
So what do you think was his goal in going? And do you think he accomplished whatever that goal was? By the way, I've never loved libertarians more than this moment. And you're right with the Green Party comparison, because if Joe Biden went and spoke at a Green Party convention, I don't think it would go very well at this point.
Well, it's also like I think people don't understand, and it's the reason why I used the Green Party comparison, because I think that there might be some people who have the perception that say, like, well, the Green Party are a clique left of the Democrats, or, you know, the differences are that, you know, whatever, like the Democrats wanted Obamacare, but they want, you know, nationalized health care. But that's not really the dynamic, or that is, but there's much more than that. The people in the Green Party look at Barack Obama as a war criminal who should be put in prison. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just, oh, I'm a clique to the left of you or something like that. And that's the same dynamic with libertarians. We look at Donald Trump as the guy who for 4 straight years backed the Saudis in their genocidal war against the people in Yemen. It's not like, oh, I wish he had lowered taxes a bit more than he did. There's much more fundamental issues. And, you know, to your question, I think you guys have covered it on your show quite a bit. I think they're really concerned about Bobby Kennedy, and they realize that the margins might be much thinner than they think. And the Libertarians are a party who have gotten millions of votes for the last 2 cycles. I don't think they're going to this cycle, but they have in the last 2 cycles, and I guess they made the calculation that was worth making an attempt to get those votes.
I think it was actually a smart play. I probably would have gone about it differently, but, you know, I think it was revealed, you know, exactly this is a game of margins, and, you know, it's a mistake to write these things off. Dave, I did want to ask you then about the eventual developments, because there's been a lot of discussion about this. Libertarian nominee ended up being Chase Oliver. I know there's been some, I guess, backlash, I guess you could say, from more of the right-wing culture people who are out there, probably not were going to be libertarians themselves. But I wanted your reaction as somebody involved in the party. You were talking to us previously about some of the schisms that have developed. So maybe give us a taste of what was going into this, what the ideological fractures in the Libertarian Party look like, and then give us where Chase Oliver falls within those ideological fractures.
Well, so my faction, which is the Mises Caucus, is just broadly speaking is Ron Paul, okay? Then there's kind of a faction that might be more Gary Johnson,
Yeah.
This is a little bit sloppy. The Ron Paul thing is a better comparison, but then there's kind of people who are just in the middle of the party, and then there is what's more the left portion of the Libertarian Party. Chase was always firmly in the kind of woke libertarian camp. He moderated that message a lot for this campaign and didn't really talk about a lot of those things that he had previously been talking about a lot. Basically what happened is the Mises guys, my guys, were the biggest demographic in the room, but not a majority. And so our candidate was winning every single round, and ultimately the middle split and went with Chase, and that got him over the edge. So that's where we are.
Okay. Gotcha. One thing that I've been wondering about is to go back a little bit to the like Green Party, Democratic Party comparison. It's unimaginable to me that Joe Biden would go and try to court the Green Party demographic. And it's not just in this moment. There has always been this very different orientation ever since 2016 when like the Jill Stein voters were blamed by the Democrats for electing Donald Trump. And it's this very nasty adversarial shaming position of like, how dare you vote for anyone other than Joe Biden? Whereas you don't hear that same thing from the Republican Party, even though, to your point, Libertarian nominees have gotten millions of votes. They could easily do the same thing and say, hey, it's you guys' fault. You didn't vote for Donald Trump in 2020. What the hell? Where were you? We needed you. Why do you think there's that different approach from Republicans to Libertarians versus from the Democrats towards the left?
Well, you know, because I've been a member of the Libertarian Party for years now, I might have a slightly different perspective than you, because I have heard that from like Republican voters saying, oh, you guys are just, you know, you throw the election to Biden.
Spoilers,
you're going to help,
et cetera,
you're going to help Democrats win. You are correct that I have not heard it from like the most powerful people in the party. It's not something that I've heard like Republican presidential candidates talk about, whereas you have heard, you know, like Hillary Clinton blaming, the Green Party for her defeat, but while she's blaming everything else in between. You know, strangely,
women didn't think she was perfect, David. That was the problem. I don't know if you saw that.
But you know, in a way, from their perspective, they're kind of right. You know, like, yeah, it is true that if everybody who voted for the Green Party voted for the Democrats, that would help the Democrats, and if everyone who voted for the Libertarians voted for Republicans, that would help them. But the issue is that from our perspective, on every issue that matters, there's no difference between them. And that, you know, I mean, I'm sure you could find one or two issues that matter where there's some difference, probably not a whole lot. But, you know, to me, what really matters first and foremost is the issue of war and peace. That's always been my biggest issue. I don't understand. I genuinely don't understand from any political ideological perspective how that's not the most important issue. You know, like if you're a left winger and the basic fundamental, you know, building block of your philosophy is that power dynamics can be abusive and you want to be on the side of the people with less power over those who wield it over them, well, there's no better example of that than war. If you're a libertarian and you care about, you know, like government violating people's rights, well, there's no better example of that than war. Yeah. And if you're a right winger who cares about like your nation and order and things like this, well, there's nothing more destructive to nations and order than war. So anyway, when it comes to the issue of war, the Democrats and the Republicans are basically identical. And that's also true when it comes to issues of banking and money and corruption and corporate bailouts and all of these things. So from our perspective, it's like, yeah, we're not voting for you guys because we're against all the things you're for.
It's so well said, Dave, and it's so true. It's also the area where the president has the most impact in terms of what they can do and the most amount of leeway from Congress, especially with the bipartisan corruption that we currently have. You made a comment earlier I want to come back to. You said, I don't think we're going to get millions of votes around this time. So why do you think that is? Is it because of some of the electoral weaknesses of Chase? Is it the RFK Jr. factor? Maybe some of these Mises caucus guys will be going there. How do you see that playing out this time?
Well, yeah, all of that. I mean, all of those things that you just said are major factors. So number one, Bobby Kennedy running is just a totally different game now. We really haven't seen anything like this since Ross Perot. And the Libertarian Party, benefited from kind of being the third party, the protest vote. And we don't have that anymore. A lot of the people, in fact, I would say an overwhelming majority of the Mises Caucus faction, which still was the largest bloc in the Libertarian Party, are just not going to support Chase. And listen, I do want to give him credit for this, because Chase is really good on war. And I'm glad that he is, and I hope that message gets out as much as possible. I do think he has other positions that are going to be complete non-starters with the overwhelming majority of people who might consider voting Libertarian, and things that I personally believe are not the correct Libertarian position. But even if you thought they were the correct Libertarian position, objectively are non-starters for huge portions of people who vote Libertarian. I have things like open borders, being very woke on the trans kids issue. I think not supporting surgeries, but supporting chemical castration, or whatever fancy word they're calling it now. Gender affirming care. But just things that are, I think, really out there. He look, the guy just got the nomination, so I'm not trying to tear him down immediately. And also, I don't want to be a sore loser, because my guy lost and he won. But I don't see how it's gonna be a year where the Libertarian candidate gets a lot of votes.
Okay.
How does the Libertarian Party and people who may vote Libertarian, how do you think they in general feel about Bobby Kennedy and how he's positioned himself? There seems to be affinity in certain places, not affinity in other places. There had been early some talk about maybe he'd pursue the Libertarian nomination. I know his name was put in. He didn't seem to get a lot of votes. So just talk us through some of those dynamics.
Well, Libertarians are individualists, and so it's all, if you ask 100 different Libertarians, you'll probably get 100 different, answers. I know there were a lot of positions that he was very bad on from the Libertarian perspective that he kind of started sounding a little better on, but there was never really an explanation for how he got there, and so to go from whatever, that the Koch brothers should be arrested for denying climate change, to now kind of seeing climate change, the agenda, as this trap to usher in totalitarianism, is a big leap. On guns and a lot of other issues, he doesn't sound the same now as he sounded in the not very distant past. But I'll tell you, from my perspective, when I first found out that he was interested in seeking the Libertarian nomination, I thought it was something we really should consider. This was back in the summer of last year. And because we did have huge areas of agreement, particularly, he was so good on Ukraine, and he was so good on the COVID regime. He was really good on the deep state and three-letter agencies in general. And he was really good on China also, which is the one that none of us probably cover enough, that there's just been so many moves to push tensions with China, so going back to the Obama administration through Trump and continuing with Biden. But for me, as I'm sure kind of for you guys, after October, it was all over. It was just, and I could maybe get over you not being great on that issue, but when your foreign policy advisor is Rabbi Shmuley, and you're going around the entire country, and you're coming, as he said on your show, I was just so disgusted. I'd never consider the guy again when he said to you guys that the Palestinians are the most pampered people in the world. It's I don't know. I don't even know what to say to that. You're done. And also, all of us are going into our conspiracy minds right now. Who would possibly say that? Who would possibly just go on this public humiliation tour like this? What do they have on you? That's all I keep thinking. And so, but even aside from that, just the policy itself, it's so disgusting.
I will say, Dave.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, we spoke to him. I actually think he believes it. It's when sometimes people are like, "Oh, it's got to be blackmail or all that." I'm not going to say that that doesn't play a role. Yeah,
that's actually worse.
I agree. No, that's what I'm saying. I want people to know that. That's why it's actually worse. Now, I'm not just talking about Bobby Kennedy. I'm talking about a lot of people out there who are beating the anti-war drum. I'm like, no, ideology is actually much more poisonous, because you can fix foreign influence theoretically, but you can't fix necessarily changing someone's belief. And that's what I wanted to get actually with you was. So for the left, Green Party, I think Jill Stein is going to get a lot of votes. And I think Israel is one of the #1 reasons that is the case. In the Libertarian Party, how many people are like you, like Ron Paul, the original Ron Paul revolution against the war? How much of that holds over to the current block of people who would vote Libertarian and are as animated by the Israel-Palestine issue, but more broadly, what it reveals about foreign policy, like you? Do you think it's a large constituency, or are those largely leftists now? How do you see it?
I think it is, there's a large group there. And I also do think that there's, I think there's a group within the Republican voters also who are, largely America first and don't want to be funding any of these wars. I think that, by the way, again, just to run the counterfactual here, not to just pick on Bobby for no reason, but the other thing that's so frustrating about him is, like, imagine if he was good on this.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Just like, imagine he would be president of the United States of America. He would win as a third party. Look, what do you got? I mean, you look at the polls. 70% of Democrats want a ceasefire. 50% of them think this is a genocide. I mean, Bobby Kennedy could pull so many of them over, and then he could pull a lot of America First Republicans. He could pull the Libertarians. I mean, if he had been good on this issue, I really think he would have broken the two-party system and won the presidency as an independent. And
certainly possible.
I mean, if he was a Democrat, they still would have rigged the thing against him, but it would have been, I think, even more powerful than Bernie Sanders. And anyway, but I do think this is a large block. It's we kind of don't get to run the test and find out, because the three biggest candidates are all so horrible on this issue, and there's like no space between them. I think Trump's criticism of Biden is that, like, he talked about giving some food to Gaza once, and that's not pro-Israel enough. And so if one of them had a different view, we would kind of get to find out how many people, but because it's just scattered to all the third party candidates, I don't know if we'll know for sure.
Yeah.
Dave, this is my last question for you. What is sort of like your political theory of how this changes, how we get out of this two-party duopoly? What's your theory? Is it ranked choice voting? Is it having a candidate who's like Bobby Kennedy, but actually good and has the, star power, whatever, to be able to break through? How do you see the best possible path playing out?
I don't want to, be a bummer here, but I don't know that there is a path. I don't know. Look, I mean, the reality of the situation is that even if, this great imaginary candidate that he won, we all know the president doesn't really have any power if he's going against the grain. And I mean,
yes.
And I'm not contradicting what you said earlier. Yes, he's the commander in chief on paper,
Right.
But if you really oppose the agenda of the CIA, they're going to find a way to compromise you or take you out. I just think that's the bottom line. So, but the system that we have right now is totally unsustainable. So this can't continue. I mean, this is just a math equation. I mean, you could just look at the debt and how much and you look at look at entitlements. I mean, these are going to blow up. It's a matter of how long until they do. But the numbers when you project out like 30 years, or I think you get to like over $100 trillion in unfunded liabilities. The debt itself is we're at a point where the interest payments on the debt are rapidly overtaking everything else in the government. This system is unsustainable. There has been a major global movement away from the dollar as a reserve currency. If that ever finally happens, then this is over. And so my thing is that I think that changing hearts and minds really matters. I think that there's a reason why governments rely on propaganda, because that's very important to them. And I think we have an opportunity now to counter the propaganda in a way that we never really had before. And so that's always kind of been what my focus is. It's all about kind of spreading a message. But, the idea that somebody's going to get in there in DC and take the whole thing down, I don't think that's how it's going to work. I think ultimately what I would like to see is a move toward decentralization as much as possible. And so, like in the same sense that, the Soviet Union wasn't going to collapse because somebody took over and, ran the thing the right way. It just was that people, balkanized. And that, I think, is perhaps our best hope.
Got it. Well, Dave, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend, and you're welcome back here anytime. We'll continue to look to your analysis, man. But thank you for fighting the good fight, and we appreciate you.
Great to see you, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you guys both. And as I've told you both privately, I'd like to say it publicly, I'm a huge fan of the show. I've been watching you guys since before you went independent, and you guys have built something that is like 1,000 times better than anything the corporate media puts out. So I'm very grateful to you guys. It was very cool to be on.
You are too kind. We appreciate you, sir, and we will see you later. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.